Matthew McCabe. Welcome to Miracle Voices. Each episode, we will be delving into stories of forgiveness, healing, and transformation that have come about from integrating the principles of the book A Course in Miracles. If you want to learn more about A Course in Miracles, visit www.acim.org. If you'd like to visit the Miracle Voices site, please go to www.miraclevoices.org. If you feel inspired to make a love offering, please visit us at miraclevoices.org/donate. All donations go to support the work of the Foundation for Inner Peace, the publisher of A Course in Miracles. Now here's your program. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Miracle Voices. This is Matthew McCabe. I'm here with my co-host, Tam Morgan. Tam, how are you doing today?
I'm very excited that we're doing this again. We took a little break.
A little break.
So, yeah, I've missed it. Yay. Doing good.
And our guest today is Sophia Demas. Sophia, how are you doing?
Oh, fabulous. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, our pleasure. And Sophia, where are you sitting today? Where are you in the world?
Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Okay. Well, Sophia, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your background and journey and, how you got to this point. You're in Philadelphia. Give us a little snapshot of your life up to this point.
Well, I was born in Detroit, Michigan, to parents who were a generation older than everybody else's parents and Greek. And so it was like living my big fat Greek wedding from the get-go. And I spent a magical childhood in Greece. When my father retired, my father got married when he was 57. So we came along kind of later. And so we moved to Greece for a few years, and it was just truly magical because I had no relatives in Detroit. And then all of a sudden, it's just extended family, and it was just wonderful. And then the Cuban crisis happened, the Bay of Pigs, and my father freaked out, and we moved to Portland, Oregon. So I grew up there. And
what age were you?
I'm sorry?
At that time. What age were you?
I was about 11 when we moved to Portland. So I grew up in Portland, and when I was my junior year, I was at Portland State for my first 2 years, and then I transferred to the University of Oregon. And I was going through some existential crisis like everybody else. And there were two issues that really I was struggling with. And within 2 months, because of a dream and a man, actually this happened right away. Those issues evaporated. And it was so dramatic to me that I could be struggling 1 minute and then just poof, the next it's gone. And that's what made me start paying attention to what the universe puts in front of you to help you out. And I became more and more convinced that the universe is your cheerleader and wants you to be free of struggles. And so, but you have to listen. So that's really when it all began. So all these miracles started happening in my life. And my friends would just go, oh, this stuff only happens to you. And it was a little annoying because obviously, I'm not a saint. I'm not a guru. And I thought, well, I'm not special. They're making it seem special, and I'm not special. So and then that's when I started paying attention. So then it took me 10 years to graduate from college because I went in with the major of art education because I was very artistic as a child. And my mother felt that, well, if you're a woman and you want to be practice your art, the only thing you can do is teach. So I kind of went along with it. And my senior year, I just needed 2 terms to graduate. And I had a dream. And in the dream, it was very sort of non-dramatic, but I hear the doorbell. I open the door. It's the postman, and he hands me an envelope. And I open the envelope, and it's my teaching license. And I look at it, and I go, I don't want to teach. And I toss it in this little plastic blue waste paper basket. I remember it. And I woke up, and I thought, no, I want to be an archaeologist. So I went to the registrar's office, and the only way you could study that was through art history, and I changed my major. Well, that didn't go over very well with my parents. But I got a scholarship right away to study in Italy, to study Etruscanology. So I sort of, it was in Italy. It was in Italy when one of my roommates, I mean, we would sit up all night and discuss philosophy and smoke Gauloise cigarettes. And he says to me, if you could be with anybody, dead or alive, for half an hour, who would it be? And I have no idea what I said, but it doesn't even matter. So I said, well, Ward, who would it be for you? He goes, Buckminster Fuller. And I go, Buckminster Fuller? I mean, I knew that he had invented the geodesic dome, but I said, why? Like, okay, so he invented the geodesic dome. So he gets up and he brings me this thin little book called No Secondhand God. And it was a poem. It's one poem. And I read this thing and I am beyond inspired. I mean, I'm just, who is this man? So I read everything I can about him, and I returned to the University of Oregon. And that's one of the miracles that I, write in my book about, because Buckminster Fuller became my idol. And a string of coincidences happened so that graduating from architecture school, he asked me to work with him. And it's one of the most amazing things to actually work with your idol. So I did architecture for 10 years. And at first, in architecture school, all I wanted to do was design the beautiful building. But working with Bucky, I became interested in solving problems. And so I ended up designing biotechnology laboratories. And it was fascinating, but it was so far from beauty. So a series of coincidences brought me to opening a couture fashion business. So I designed dresses. And again, quickly, I got bored designing for the beautiful woman, the beautiful body. I mean, you could put a, flower sack on her and she's beautiful. So I had 2 wonderful assistants, and we made like about 40 beautiful evening gowns for pregnant women that we rented out. And that got me national attention. And then I made a line for very, very large women, like luxurious dresses. And I wanted to make women feel good, women, with these, kind of issues, bodies with issues. And then it just hit me that surely there's something else that can help a woman feel good about herself than clothing. And what made me think that was I had some clients that were absolutely gorgeous, and they had a poor self-image. So I thought, it's self-esteem. So I went back to school, and I graduated when I was 50 with my degree in counseling psychology. So what I did is I designed a 12 workshop program called Living a Fearless Life. And I piloted it in the Philadelphia prison system. And the commissioner loved the program, but the board, which consisted of 32 men and 2 women, turned it down. So I didn't get funding, but I did get funding from a state agency. And I would do these workshops for ex-trafficked women, ex-homeless women, women in recovery. And it was just to see these people transform. So then I was about 11 years ago. It was when I turned 60 that I reconnected with a childhood friend. And I told her my latest miracle. And she goes, "Oh, Sophia, these things only happen to you." And for some reason, it clicked. And I meditated on it. And I thought, coincidences happen to everyone. Some people can also claim miracles, but the inordinate number of miracles, there's some reason for it. And when I discovered the key, that's when I decided to write my book. And interestingly, about 15 years ago, an astrologer told me I should write a book. And I said, absolutely not. And then a couple of years later, coincidentally, it's a story, a whole story in itself, but I came face to face with a medium, and the medium told me that I was going to write a book. And I told her, and she was world renowned. And I said, absolutely not. I said, first of all, I have nothing to say. And 2, I'm a people person. I'm not going to sequester myself somewhere and write a book. I can tell you that right now. And she listened. And then she said, word for word, she said, Spirit Guide says, when she's ready, there are many spirits here to help her and many hands on earth. And that's how it went down. So it took 8 years to write, but I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled with the book, the reviews, and the feedback.
Can you tell us what the name of your book is?
I'm sorry?
Can you tell us the name of your book?
The Divine Language of Coincidence, How Miracles Transformed My Life After I Began Paying Attention.
Okay. That's great. And it's exactly about this type of situation you're talking about with these coincidences that happen over and over and over again.
Yes.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
Just one question about Buckminster Fuller, because my goodness, was he ahead of his time? I know he had a big influence on Walt Disney, and you can still see the geodesic dome in Epcot, but he had a lot of other crazy inventions. I don't know what else to call them, that were like, he had the super fast car. Was it the Fly's Eye?
That was my project. That's what I worked on. Oh, wow.
Why don't you
about the Fly's Eye?
Why don't you describe some of these, just maybe one or two of these things, and maybe a little bit of texture about what Buckminster Fuller was like, because he was quite a character.
He was a character, and he was a dear, dear, dear friend. And I'm just going to give you a snippet of working with him, what it was like working with him. So I was supposed to create a 20-sided space frame floor system for the Fly's Eye. So this is, like struts and sort of geodesic looking. And I had to do it in ink in perspective. And I forget the name of the big computer room here at UPenn. And it was just months. You had to be in line for months to get to use it. So I did it by sine cosine. And so I did it. I mean, right now, if you told me how to do this, there is no way I can tell you. But anyway, I did. And I was to design the interior of it. So I did this fixed thing, and it looked like a mixer, and it had a bathroom and a kitchen. And the bathroom, of course, was included the Dymaxion toilet. And so he was in California at the time, and he wanted it. And I sent it to him, and he calls me in the office, and he says, darling, no, I want pull in, pull out, Japanese feel circus space. Click. And I'm like, what? So I knew he sailed, and I completely changed this interior world to have all the toilet coming out of the floor, the closet, all these things coming out of the floor. And I had to do it all in ink again. And he was crazy about it. But it was like that. I mean, you had to interpret the uninterpretable. I mean, it was, and he would make words up like that too. But it was just amazing. And another amazing thing, which because my second book is at the publishers right now, because there were so many miracles and coincidences to cram into one book. So I plucked out all the ones that had to do with death. And it's a consciousness beyond death. And one of the chapters is on Bucky and Anne's death. It was the most romantic death I've ever read about, heard about, and it could only happen to him.
I'd almost love to go right into that story, but there's so much else we want to cover with you. Course in Miracles based and your forgiveness story, but we might have to come back to that later. But I love that line. I think that that's such a great title for a book itself, Interpret the Uninterpretable, because that's exactly what Bucky seemed to have come into your life to teach you about, which was, as you said, here you wanted to do one thing and you ended up doing something so different, which was solving problems. Mm-hmm. And then you moved right into, your path that you wanted to create beauty, and went into, helping, going from the outside of creating these beautiful gowns to then going into the problems that women have with their own self-body image and helping with that problem. And then moving in, like, it just seems like he gave you the architecture, or supported you to learn about the architecture of problem solving, including bringing, your own discomfort with people saying this only happens to you, to how you can interpret why that happens to you and offer it to other people. And I think that that's incredibly beautiful. I've had that with my own life about, psychic experiences as a child, and people saying, why just you? And really, really offering the teachings of, no, this can be for you too. Some of us are born with a predilection for certain talents and attractions, but they can be taught and they can be shared. And I love that this path led you to that and to that sharing.
Well, you said something that I had incorporated in my Living a Fearless Life. You said you went from the outside to the inside. And I would tell my women, I said, first we start the program with the outside. So the icebreaker would be putting on makeup. And so these, prisoners, I remember the commissioner says, we're trying to get it off of them and you're going to put it on. And I said, we have to do the makeup. So I would tell them, I would bring from the outside this superficial makeup into the inside. And then I said, once you pay attention to the inside, to your inner voice, then you're ready to go back outside and be part of a community and help the community. And it was just amazing that you said that.
Mm. Really interesting. Well, I mean, that segues us, and I'm going to hand it over to Matt because he always has the best questions. But also, these are, when we talk about miracles, we don't mean in the Course in Miracles terminology, you get your parking space. That's lovely. That's a lovely coincidence if you ask for it, because our definition is the changing perception from
exactly.
And so, it is the same thing as the outside. Look at that coincidence. Look at this. But what's really going on inside is the knowing that anything is possible.
Yes.
And knowing that we're supported. And if it's right, it will appear and happen. So, Matt, you go for it. Go for one of your great questions.
Well, no, Sophia, I just want to hear how A Course in Miracles came into your voice. Came into your life.
Well, there's some truth to that too. It was all like, if I could encapsulate the experience, that it was like, I would say almost 2 years of the Course in Miracles hitting me on the head and just refusing. So what happened, my first encounter, I was in Oregon visiting my mother, and I was there for an extended period of time to reconstruct the house. And so my friend Lee would tell me about the psychic that she would go to. And I wanted to go to the psychic, and I left it for the last minute. So it was about like 2 days before I was leaving to come back to Philadelphia that I called her up and I said, I really want to go to your psychic. And she goes, oh, okay. And she comes back to the phone. She goes, I can't find the card. I don't know where the card is. It's probably at work. I'll tell you tomorrow. And I said, well, you have to tell me tomorrow because I'm leaving. So she calls, she goes, I just don't understand. I can't find the card anywhere. I said, well, you go to her. Where is she? She goes, like 18, it's between 28th and 38th on Division. It's a blue house. It's a blue building. And there's a sign up front that says Sun something. So I jump in the car and I go up and down Division, and I just saw one blue building, but it was an apartment building. There was a restaurant that was Sun something Chinese restaurant, and I couldn't find it. So I parked my car and I go up to the blue house to look for the name Peggy. She couldn't remember the last name. There's no Peggy living there. So I go back to the car and I look around, and there's a storefront and it says Course in Miracles. And I'm like, there's only one book featured. And I'm thinking, that is so strange. So I venture in. I mean, the car was parked right outside of it. So I venture in, and this little mousy guy, I said, well, what is this? And he hands me a pamphlet. I'm like, oh God, okay. So I put it in my bag, forget about it. I'm on the plane, finish my Vanity Fair magazine. Now what? So I, start reading this little pamphlet, and I'm like, yes, there's the ego, and then there's the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit wants us to be together. Oh, check. I go for that. And then the opposite of love is fear. And I'm like, check. I'll go for that. By the end of the book, the pamphlet, I'm going to go get this book. So I go to Barnes and Noble and I take a look at this book that looks exactly like the Bible with numbered paragraphs. And I'm like, forget it. So I forget about the book. And then when I started my dress designing business, I was introduced to a woman who was an accessory designer who had the most amazing collection of fabrics. She was this Italian, Gloria. And so we're talking, and she says something about, I don't know, ego, something. And then there was more lingo that I questioned her. I said, have you by chance heard of the Course in Miracles? Oh, she goes, oh, I've been a student for 8 months. And she says, you have to buy the book. You have to do the lessons. And then you're going to get stuck in about lesson 11 or 12. And you're going to go, I don't understand this, but you have to keep going. It is the best thing ever. And I went, oh, okay. Promise. Yes. Promise. Do not buy the book. Gloria and I become friends. It's a year later. She gives me the book for my birthday. I take the book and put it under my nightstand. So months go by, and I wake up one morning in the middle of the night, actually, and I'm going through the expense column and the income column, and there's much more going out that's coming in, and I'm starting to get anxious, and it went downhill from there. It was like I could feel what I could call a panic attack, a major panic attack. And something said, get up, turn on the light, and get a magazine. So I turn on the light. There's no magazine. Oh, well, of course, the book is in my reach. I open the book and I start reading. And all I remember was something like, lack is not a part of your life. You have everything you need to basically be happy. There's love, and there's your fellow, your brother. And I'm like, I had gone not even the third of the page when I felt tears on my chest. And that is when I decided that anything that could bring me from a panic attack to tears of gratitude, I don't care if it's bitter medicine, I'm doing this. And that's what got me onto the Course in Miracles.
Okay. And
I love it called bitter medicine. I'm going to remember that one.
No, because it's true. There,
yeah.
There's been, that's what it felt like sometimes.
Yeah, I love that.
But so much beauty in it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, bittersweet.
Bittersweet, yeah.
Sophia, I know you've got a great story for forgiveness. Can you tell us what that is?
Well, okay. So throughout the book, I talk about, or I write about my relationship with my husband. So I did not want to get married. I did not want children. And obviously I did not want to write a book, but you know how things go with the universe. And I was very successful against marriage until the age of 45. So I find out that I have married a rager, a full-blown, angry rager that had such a beautiful disposition. And then he would just erupt out of nowhere. Like he would perceive a wrong. Like if I happened to cross my eyes, I was attacking him or whatever. It was like, and I describe these romantic getaways that he would just sabotage. So finally I thought, bye-bye, because I could. And I left him. And I was staying with a friend. And I vowed, I'm never going to see this guy again. And I remember the day I had the divorce attorney's card in my hand. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to just open the Course in Miracles, because I just was so thrilled with my decision to leave him, because now this is a new lease on life. And I am just so I'm going to see what the Course has in store for me. So I opened the book And the title of the chapter is The Healed Relationship. I'm talking bitter medicine, but it's a vow I took. I have to read no matter how much I don't want to. So I start reading about, like connection and I'm like, no, that's not, there's reasons that people can leave somebody. Well, the next paragraph answered me. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is a unique situation. And then I thought, oh my God, I'm having a debate with a book. And the essence, what I got at the time, because, your essence from the book changes every time you read it, was God is in everyone. And if your brother comes to you with their hand outstretched and you say no to your brother, you say no to God. That was my understanding at the time. So I thought, okay, I'm not going to say no to God. Okay. He calls, I'll talk to him. He called the next day. We had been separated for 5 months and he wants to meet. And I said, okay, you can come over on Tuesday. So that Sunday, my friend Alice comes over and she said, could you read to me what you read that changed your mind? Because she knows who I am and my will. So we're out of the balcony and I'm reading it. It was Sunday afternoon. And we're just looking at each other like, how could so much richness be in this one chapter? She said, it's written for you. So Tuesday, Frank comes over and I was angry. And I needed to have something between us. So I sat him down across from me from the dining room table. And I said to him, I just want you to know that the only reason you are here is because of a miracle. And he says, well, I have a miracle for you too. Well, that's not in his lingo. This is like he's speaking Chinese all of a sudden. So I said, okay, you go first. And he explains to me that he said, I was taking the fountain apart. And we have this fountain in the garden that has a very heavy, tall column. And he said, the column slipped and fell on my hand. I look at his hand, which he's grabbing, and there's a bruise and a little tiny scratch, which if what he said was true, that hand should be hamburger. So, and while he's saying this, he takes off his wedding ring, and his ring is an oval. The ring took the weight of the column and saved his hand. Well, I needed to hear something that dramatic to be disarmed. That disarmed me. I could not believe that like the fountain had to fall at a certain angle, and I just couldn't see how this possibly could happen. So we started talking and we started getting together, and the love was there. And I was supposed to be going to Maui. It was December 12th. My best friend was getting married for the third time, and I was going to be the matron of honor for the third time. And I wanted him to come with me, but there was some fear, just this traces of fear of what could happen. And finally, I thought, if he's coming with me, I'm not going to be in fear. And I made that decision because I thought, wait a minute. First, we have the Course in Miracles, and then we have the wedding ring. I mean, maybe something is going on here. So I invited him to come with me. the morning when we were taking off for the airport, we were in a cab, and I said, "Oh, I've got to go get reading material," because it was a 14-hour flight. And I run up the stairs, and I have this shelf with 7 books that I started but hadn't finished. And I just grabbed one. And when I got in the cab, I was so disappointed. It was Endless Energy. It was called Endless Energy, because I thought, why didn't you get the novel? I mean, okay, so we're in the plane, and I'm reading this book. This woman is she's an energy, she does energy clearings. And I'm thinking, this is really fantastic what she's doing, and the auras. And I'm going back in the book to look at the notes, and prayer works. And then, going back to to do research studies on prayer, and going back and forth. And all of a sudden, I'm at back of the book, and there's her name, Deborah Green, and she's in Maui. And not only is she in Maui, but she's on Kihei Road, and that's where our condo was. Well, I'm sorry, but that's what I call a coincidence. I mean, I could be going 360 degrees anywhere, and we're heading right to this woman. So I contacted her during the layover and told her when we're available, and she told me that she could give us these energy clearings. So I said, Frank, I didn't think he would go for it. And I said, look, Maui, Kihei Road, if you agree to this energy clearing, it'll be my Christmas present. He says, well, it's meant to be. So we had the energy clearings, and I thought Frank would bolt. So I took the car, and I was roaming around. So I get back 2 hours later. There were 2 hours, and no Frank. 15 minutes more, no Frank. 20 minutes, here comes Frank, and he was blinking wildly, like he just came out of under a rock. So they hugged, and we said goodbye. And so I said, Frank, what do you think? And he says, there's something to this. And I said, well, what happened? And he didn't want to talk about it. And 3 days later, he said he wanted to talk about it. And he told me about what came up during the reading, which were things I had told him, but it takes a stranger sometimes. So, and that was in 2009. And he has not had one episode since. I am married to my ideal companion. And there you go. That's the miracle. It's a change of perception, both of us.
No more episodes of just rage.
Nothing,
is what you mean.
Nothing. Yeah. Gone.
Weird.
It's just, I feel like I'm the luckiest woman in the world. And
did your perception change, or did his, or both?
Well, it's interesting because the Course says somewhere that it takes one person in the relationship to have the shift. And I always thought that I was the one that wanted the connection, and then the other person would not want it. But in this case, I wanted separation. Forget the unity. I wanted separation. The ego was banging, and it was, I don't know if it was one thing or, because here we had some external things. I mean, I can't claim credit, to have something external like his wedding ring save his hand, which happened to disarm me. It was, to me, it was like, the whole thing about Saul becoming St. Paul. It was like that dramatic to me. So I can't claim credit for that. To me, that is divine intelligence that knows what's better for me than I do. So even though my will is staunch, the universe has said something else, and I had to listen to it. And the same that goes for my daughter. I didn't want kids. And 11 years ago, Father Stephen, who is one of my mentors, who I think is the closest thing to Jesus Christ, he opens up covenant houses, which are shelters for homeless youth. And Father Stephen and I had coffee every other month for 8 years until he retired and moved to Florida. So one of our coffees, he said, you know that girl I told you about from Turkey that ended up at the shelter in Atlantic City? I said, yeah. He says, you know, I'm taking her to get her cap and gown. Can I bring her all over for coffee? I said, sure. Well, he brings this beautiful girl over. And she had just turned 19 that week. So, you know, I asked her, how did you get to the United States? And she tells me, and I said, what? And then tell me more. And she goes on to tell me more. And I'm like, what? And Father Stephen goes, I'm going to see you back here in an hour and 15 minutes. I have an errand to run. So in that time, I heard the most incredible stories of abuse and abandonment that could not possibly happen to one human. Re-traumatization. And so off she goes, and Frank comes home. I had it all in my mind. She was going to live with us while she went to college. And I said, Frank, you know that pamphlet you brought home about having a Chinese student stay with us? And he goes, yeah, what do you think? And I said, I have a better idea. So we took her out to dinner, and we fell in love with her, and we adopted her, and she took my name. And she is now 30 and married, living in Greece, getting her third master's. And there you go.
Wow.
Amazing. Beautiful, beautiful story.
You know, it's like I have a will, right? I'm trying to exercise my will, but divine intelligence, you know, says otherwise. And in the book, I write about obstacles that at some point I go, God, why are you doing this to me? And either the next day or 2 years down the line, I am thanking God for those obstacles. But you have to listen. So let's say I want a red Ferrari, and I want this Ferrari really bad, and I can't get the loan. I have another obstacle. You know, I can't get to the place. And no, by God, I want my red Ferrari. So I buy the red Ferrari because it's my will, and then I crash and die. Well, maybe I should have listened.
Maybe. Unless the deeper learning I have is unless that was what was supposed to happen.
Unless that was what was supposed to happen.
There are these little caveats that I find in the Course that are really tricky, and they show up more and more. Like, yes, it is true when a brother asks, to do a foolish thing, you do it. But there is a line right after that says, unless it is harmful, unless it hurts someone.
Yes.
So, and that's really important because people are throwing around that quote right and left without the second part.
Yes.
And the second part actually matters. So the same thing, everything is God's will. When you listen, you're totally in alignment. But when you don't, you're brought back to alignment, and it still works no matter what. And that's the loveliest part. But we also phrase things like, this wouldn't have happened if I'd only done such and such. No, it's all supposed to have happened. But when we listen, it does go easier in accordance with like the happy dream. It's lighter. It's a whole different perspective on it. And as you say, and you experience more what seems like coincidences happen. And at least this is my perspective through it. And as you say, every time you open the Course, you get deeper understanding according to where you are. That's the living document of it. But there is something that seems to reveal itself as the more one listens, the more one doesn't have to go off and do the things that seem more difficult or hurtful.
Well, that was exactly when I said that when I was reconnecting with my friend and she said, "Oh, these things only happen to you," and I started to meditate on the key. That was the key, because what I realized was coincidences happen to everyone. So you can either go, "Wow, what a wild coincidence," and just carry on. Or you go, "I'm going to call that person. I'm going to read that book. And it's taking action. And once you take action, you can possibly have a miracle. But if you just let it go, it just remains a coincidence." That's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, Sophia, we normally ask about, what you do when you get caught in an ego storm and how you bring in forgiveness, but you have a really interesting story about the Lord's Prayer and how you translated that from its original, was it Aramaic? I can't remember.
Yes,
Greek.
Aramaic. Oh no, actually, yes.
Could you tell us about that?
Oh yeah, that is such a beautiful prayer. So one day I was taking my lunch over to Rittenhouse Square to sit down on a park bench, and I came upon 3 empty park benches, but one had a book on it. So I picked the one with the book. And the name of this book was "Who Told You You Were Naked?" And I thought, that's odd. And it was written by a Trappist monk who was also a student of the Course in Miracles. And this is before I tripped on the Course in Miracles. So I'm picking up this book, and the book was the most beautiful writing on forgiveness. It was just absolutely beautiful. And I realized as I'm reading the book that the word forgiveness is not in the Greek version, Greek is my first language. So I start going line by line, and I thought, all these nuances. I mean, if you only know the Lord's Prayer in English, you're gypped. So I restructured the prayer. I retranslated the prayer, and I did it with the blessing of Father Dimitrios Konstantelos, another mentor of mine, a world-renowned theologian and Greek scholar. He has since died. And so when I went to him with the prayer, the first sentence, I thought that he would, he would have like maybe a difficult time with it. I said, okay, I'm going to start with my first sentence. I said, but let me know if you think I'm a heretic. So the first line is "Our Creator." And I have a problem with the patriarchy in the church. "Our Creator, who resides in sound, light, and vibration." And he goes, "That's the truth." He goes, "It's heavens in Greek, plural. So sound, light, and vibration, all realms, yes." And there was one line that I had trouble with, and that was, "And lead us not into temptation." And he said, and the Pope also had the trouble with the same line. And he says, God's not going to lead us into temptation. And so he quickly translates it to, and not lead us, let us not surrender into temptation. So the onus is on us, not God. So that's how the prayer goes. And another line is, "And give us this day our daily bread." And I grew up thinking, well, I guess it's so that we ask for food. But in the Greek, it's not that. It is, sustenance, spiritual sustenance. That's the bread. So there's nuances that I put back into the prayer.
Beautiful. I think those are really helpful translations, and it seems like those ancient translations always go from these smaller languages to Greek is the first translation, and then from Greek to English, let's say. So that makes sense. It's closer to the source.
Actually, so when the disciples asked Jesus, well, how do we pray? And he told them the prayer. That was in Aramaic. They spoke Aramaic. But the first written translation of the prayer was in Greek. So what happened is I tripped on two translations that were retranslated back to Aramaic and then to English. And one I didn't even know what it was talking about, but the other one was so close to the Greek. So that helped me with my translation. So yes, it's ancient. Yes.
That's a new translation in itself of It's All Greek to me, because you should really find out what that means in Greek first.
Oh, I've heard that one before.
Important.
Well, Sophia, you have such a wonderful story. It reminds me of the course quote, all things work together for good. There are no exceptions except for in the ego's judgment. So you have a lot of coincidences that are no coincidence. And what a beautiful story you have, forgiveness story and your path. If you would, share the name of your book one more time.
The Divine Language of Coincidence, How Miracles Transformed My Life After I Began Paying Attention.
Great. And Tam, did you have any final thoughts or comments?
I am just smiling. This is really beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Sophia, for your miracle voice. What an interesting life you've led, meeting Buckminster Fuller, working with him, and then your book and all these coincidences you've had and the reconciliation with your husband. My goodness, you have a lot to write about. So thank you for coming on the podcast. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Tremendous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening today. Please subscribe to Miracle Voices by hitting the subscribe button on your podcast app. If you are enjoying these conversations, please consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever podcast app you use. And lastly, please visit us at miraclevoices.org and join our newsletter so we can stay connected. Until the next podcast, I want to leave you with my favorite course quote, "When you want only love, you will see nothing else."